Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jon Leland, and I'm so happy that you've joined us for another edition of Video Mojo, our playful exploration of the bleeding edge of social media and video vibrant presence. Our mission is to really help you have a more vibrant video presence, a more vibrant social media presence, and I'm really delighted that you're here and took the time to be with us. This, as you may know, if you're a regular viewer, is a 4-course meal. So let me give you a quick rundown on what we're going to be doing today. My Tee It Up is about the good guys of the media and the good guys of social media in particular, and what I like to call the real internet. And then I'm really delighted to have Jay Acunzo with us, an author and really an innovator in the storytelling dimensions, if you will, the storytelling techniques that go into making web shows and podcasts. He's a real expert in that field, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation, our collaborative conversation. And then, of course, we open it up to you, whether you're watching live on YouTube or live on Facebook. And please use the comments. We want your questions. We want your feedback. It's all about this collaborative conversation, and we want you to be part of it in the community campfire. And then, as always, the dessert on the 4-course meal is my luscious link for the day. And today I have a utility that will let you download videos from YouTube and incorporate them into your productions. So that's something that I think is really useful. So my Tee It Up today, before I talk about the good guys, I just wanted to announce that we did give away a $100 Amazon gift certificate, and thanks so much to Sean Shepard for helping me make that happen. Tad Nason was the winner. This is his selfie with Video Mojo in the background and a couple of choice product placements for Sean. And congratulations, way to go. The good guy's story, very briefly, is the social media gets a lot of bad rap, and it deserves it. And, misinformation campaigns and all of that are a very real thing. And we have human beings here. And us human beings get to interact with each other and, for the most part, do good in the world. And I want to make this Tee It Up as kind of a theme, because Jay Acunzo, the guest that I'm about to introduce, is one of those good guys. And the developer of the app that I'm going to talk about in Luscious Links is another good guy. And of course, I mean nothing sexist. You could be a good guy as a woman as well. In the spirit of what I'm talking about people that want to make a difference for other people and contribute. And as long as I've been on the internet, and I've been active on the internet since the beginning of, the web browser in 1995, there are people who want to make a difference, and all of this social media stuff, at the end of the day, is an opportunity for us to contribute to each other, to serve each other, and there are people, and there is this real internet that makes it all happen and makes the world go round. So that's the Tee It Up, and that really is a good segue into introducing my guest. So our collaborative conversation today is with Jay Acunzo, and Jay is somebody who is one of the good guys in the spirit of, wanting to make a difference, but also in terms of really being collaborative. He's a veteran of both Google and of ESPN. He's also author of a book called Break the Wheel, and has his own podcast called Unthinkable. He helps companies tell stories. He has a company called Marketing Showrunners, which is, helps people like the New York Times make better podcasts. And I'm just delighted that he's here with us. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate you having me today. It's an odd time, an odd week, but it's nice to just chat about creative stuff for a change of pace.
We could go down the political avenue, and in fact, one of the things that I like about you, and I think we have in common, I was mentioning before we started the webcast, is that you're not afraid to express yourself politically and otherwise in your social media accounts. I'm kind of the same way, and I get asked all the time, should I really be doing that? in my social media feed, particularly because I'm really on the web to do business. So what would you say to somebody who asked you that question?
I mean, I definitely can't answer it for them, right? But I do think for me, I'm fortunate to have worked for lots of companies that want their employees to be whole people, and they treat their marketing like they're marketing to whole people. They're not just like, you're here doing marketing for us, so that's how we're going to treat you as a marketer on the team. We're marketing to, I don't know, people in HR, and that's all we know and care to know about them. They're in HR. And I just think that's an archaic way of running a business, and people want to align with others around shared beliefs. And yeah, for me, maybe it's partly because I don't have a boss. I am my own boss, which means I have the worst boss possible and the best boss, depending on the day. And so it doesn't have like a decision-making process that makes me tweet something that I believe. So to someone who's struggling to think about that, I would just say this. If you feel like that idea is welling up inside you and you're restricted from expressing it, how long do you want to go on acting like that? Because we have a finite number of days left on this earth, and there are some employers out there that will allow you to self-express. So you have to make that trade-off.
Yeah, it's really true. So it's interesting when you talk about employers. I was curious, given you have this really impressive resume of having worked at Google and having worked in broadcasting as I did. You were at ESPN, I was at USA Network, and how do you feel like that history at those two high-profile companies have helped inform who you've become today, and whether it's marketing showrunners or just kind of and I'll mention you have marketingshowrunners.com and jacunzo.com. Those are the two websites for people to check you out.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Marketing showrunners, we're teaching the craft of making shows, but we tag that by saying make shows that make a difference, because there's lots of podcasts, lots of video shows that just sort of exist, but they don't really have a purpose behind it. They don't really have impact, and we want to help people do the latter.
Yeah. So how did Google and ESPN contribute to you starting to do that?
Yeah, it's interesting in very different ways, I think. When I worked for different media companies as an intern, which actually I was an intern at ESPN, I can claim no credit for having any full-time job there because I was just an intern on their PR and comms department. But working in the media, working for different print publications and sports, right up to my role at ESPN, I just sort of exercised this muscle, this desire of like, I want to make things that make me feel something and put it out in the world and hope that other people feel the same way. I had a friend tell me once, you want to write to a stadium of you. Tim Urban, the writer of Wait But Why, fantastic blog, he says he writes to a stadium of Tims. And so I think working in organizations that just valued the creative craft and content for its own sake, not as a means to an end, at least for most of the team, it just sort of taught me that when you create stuff, it is a profoundly selfish endeavor. Right up until that moment that you hit publish, and then you have this little tiny, what Anthony Bourdain called golden moment, where you can appreciate it and say, that's pretty good. And then you have to send it out into the world, and it's no longer yours, and you're on to the next thing. So I think working in the media let me unleash against this desire that I always had as a student who loved to write, which was just make stuff that you like, and others will like it more. And then working for Google and other tech companies, I kind of saw how you can take that desire, that like intrinsic desire to create things that are good, and put it into a business context, because businesses are this high leverage vehicle for action. And some people use it as a vehicle to amass personal wealth alone, and others use it as a way to actually like somehow change something for the better. So when you marry the two, media is great at serving the audience above all else. Some media, let's qualify this. And brands that sell products and services are great at monetizing and basically building the structure around that creativity. If you could marry the two, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, there is a lot of resistance to that, though. I want to transition into really specifically talking about web shows, or I think you talk about original series and have a special focus on podcasts. And we can come back to that distinction, but you're such a champion for this longer form environment and the opportunity, whether it's a podcast or a live stream or an original series. Why do you think that's so important? I'm like preaching to the choir, but you can encourage me, and I am also encouraged. I love Wait But Why. I think that's we'll put that into the show notes as a great resource. But I am doing what I love here, right? I don't have a big
Yeah.
audience. It isn't like I'm getting 1,000 clicks or whatever vanity metric you would choose of the day. So that's in your sweet spot. Why web shows or other long form series?
Because it's all about resonance, not reach. And nothing good happens without resonance. Nothing good happens without people that are actually here to spend time with you. You earn trust and love over time. And I think, I came out of the marketing world working for content teams and leading a few in a few cases. And it was very much focused on reach. It was very much focused on getting in front of people or awareness. That's not the goal. You don't want to be just known. You want to be liked. You want to have people that believe what you believe. You want to go on a journey to change something for the better in this world with those people. And hopefully you're either providing the platform on which they stand, or you're leading the community, or a bit of both. And shows are great for depth in this world that is trending shallow.
I
Sure.
used something off your website actually about how a web show or a video series can transform the culture of an industry. And that seems like a big, bold promise. And I wanted to ask you to make good on that. How is it
Yeah.
possible for something like an original series to change an industry?
Well, I think a lot of people who create content do so from a place of, I'm talking about in the business sense and the marketing sense, they do so from a place of trying to be the expert, where they're just going to hand out a bunch of ideas because they already know something or they've done something and they're relaying back what they did and how you can too. And don't get me wrong, there's a certain usefulness to that, but it's really, really limiting. It kind of does pander to the status quo. It's like you already know what you're looking for as a consumer, and I have it for you. Google search is a good example. Everyone's sort of optimizing for that. You're pandering to the status quo. But I think with a show, you stop acting like an expert and you start acting like an explorer. And you can ask questions that people can't just Google quickly. You can become what my friend Andrew Davis calls a visionary, which doesn't mean you have a vision of the future, but you have a vision for the future. You're like, I think this is currently broken, or it's underexplored and deserves to be explored and understood more. So why don't we go that direction? Like that would be a better future than today. So you have this vision for what the future should be, and you go and build it, or at least explore it, and invite people along with you. That's a show. A show allows for this aeration of new ideas, this in-depth exploration, not just saying, you have a question, here's the answer, right? Like another way to look at this is people might be Google searching certain questions, but what if there's a question they don't even know to ask that they should know first before they ask that second question?
Hmm.
So show is a way to develop this relationship where you can say to people like, yeah, I've gotten to know you enough that I know what you think you want, but first you need to hear something that you really need. And then the next step will be clear. So it's about this deeper exploration, which can help people understand or feel or see differently and better, and thus shift the culture. It's far different than just pieces of content meant to rank on search and answer quick questions. So I kind of have a name for both of those types of content. The latter is this transactional type of content. It's just about a quick injection of information, which is ultimately pretty commodified today. But the show should be more of a transformational experience. So not a transaction, the goal of which is to finish the transaction, but a transformational experience, the goal of which is to spend more time with it and actually benefit not just in terms of what you know, but the way you feel, the way you think, the way you see. So that's why I really, really like shows, and I think that's why they can create so much change.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it also reminds me why I like you and why I follow you on social media. Because, I call Video Mojo a playful exploration. And so that idea that being an explorer in some ways has, well, you tell me, but, is more valuable even than being an expert. Like what did you call it? Not just commoditized, but this idea of going after Google results is very ordinary. And in some ways, even trying to be an expert or a thought leader is relatively ordinary compared to somebody who, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but willing to be an explorer. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Go
something to
ahead.
be said about what you do, John. Like, having this inherently inquisitive nature, but also pursuing it. And that so often is the hard part, is to say to people publicly through your show or through any kind of content that persists, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I'm on the hunt for them. And you are invited to come along for that. And I feel like that builds such a strong community of super fans of your work and also advocates and evangelists for the ideas that you all find together. The best analogy I can give is like, you're currently at base camp with other people you'd like to serve, and you see the mountain peak in the distance, but there's a jungle between you and it. And you're like, we really want to get there. Wouldn't that be great? We believe we should. I don't know how to get there though. So I'm just going to pick up my machete and start swinging away. And I'm inviting you to do the same thing. And sometimes we'll find a certain path. Sometimes we'll hit a snag. And it's just this constant trek towards something greater and better versus that transactional content, which is really in and out. It's one and done, has a very short shelf life and value. And the value is just the answer, the information. It's not really the experience of it all. In other words, a transaction you're supposed to finish, not spend time with. Right? So instead of trying to help people, I think you should try to change them. That's a more profound type of help.
Yeah, and it also speaks to the, what I consider the holy grail is this building authentic long-term relationships. And one of my favorite quotes from you is, tell me if I got it, it's not getting people to arrive, which speaks to the SEO and the search engine optimization. It's how do you get people to stay and actually engage. That's my favorite J. Acunzoism. And that,
I appreciate that.
I guess I'm amplifying what you were just saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice button on the rant that everyone just heard me go on, because I do feel like we get so obsessed with total strangers entering our ecosystem for the first time, like who arrives. So for those who are from a marketing background like me, you've heard about the funnel over and over again, the funnel, the funnel, the funnel. And everyone thinks it's about expanding the top of the funnel or awareness. And as I said before, it's really about affinity. And so instead of picturing a funnel, where way more people know you exist than ever come along with you, whatever the action is you're seeking from them, think of it as concentric circles. So in the center is super fans, people who are vocal, they're taking action, they're engaged, right? In the election we're going through, they're the ones that got out the vote. They're the ones that are being incredibly active. They're not just posting on social media, all that stuff. Then the outermost circle is total strangers. And you have all these gradations of moving from a total stranger to a super fan. Well, I think our jobs are to serve more deeply the people who are kind of in the middle. They're like casual observers, maybe somewhat active or passive audience. Like they're already aware of you. They already might even like you. How do you serve them more deeply so they become super fans? And then equip those super fans to go to the outermost rings, the total strangers, on your behalf for free, word of mouth. And so you might think like, okay, this makes sense in theory, like talking about human relationships, but I run a business and I have like dollars and cents. It makes sense there too. It's way less expensive to do it this way. It's way more expensive. In other words, it's very inefficient to run around the world yelling at people who don't know you and try to convince them to take an action. It's a lot easier to go to people that already know you. They're giving you some benefit of the doubt, even if that number is really small right now, and you give them an excuse to help you evangelize your cause out in the world. And the problem is we think we're doing that. We think we have fans and we're done serving them, but we're really not investing heavily enough in those people. And everyone has some. They're super easy to reach. They're already in your ecosystem. And so it's this switch from who arrives to who stays and serving them more deeply, because that's the entire point of the job.
Yeah, you said that so well. And I'm a believer, and you don't even know this, but the last webinar that I did called Beyond the Hype, I talked literally about concentric circles and had a graphic along the lines. So let's open up our line. I feel like, open up the lines of when we talk shows used to invite phone calls. Anyway, this is the community campfire section. And any of you that are watching on YouTube or on Facebook Live, we have a question. Vince Castellana, so he wanted to know if we ever have second thoughts about having been so open about your political views.
I have second thoughts about my views, not being open about them. So what I mean is I am a work in progress in every regard, but definitely when it's not like my lane, talking about creativity and content creation, for example, that's sort of my lane. But when I'm talking about politics, or I'm talking about bigger societal things, or I'm finding my way out of the illusion I grew up in as, a straight white male from an upper middle class family in suburban Connecticut, like there's all these things that, I had blinders on for a lot of my life. And so I am undereducated in certain things. Sometimes just the technical machinations of how our system works, and sometimes cultural things, for better or worse, oftentimes worse. So I often have second thoughts about what I've said publicly, but hopefully that's healthy, because hopefully if I look back on them, it's like, oh, okay, I was a little bit lacking in nuance, and I need to update the nuance there, or I've just learned something that means I was wrong back then. So I'm not really that skittish about sharing things publicly, But I am very much like, I always have second thoughts about the beliefs I used to have, or my stance on something, or even just the way I articulate something that I still believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Um, I'm looking for more questions, so those of you, please use the comment stream on YouTube and Facebook. I have to say that for me, life is too short. And, it's kind of like you take the chances to become explorer, you take the chances to be your authentic self. But
Yeah.
I actually was listening to a little bit of the book called Superfans. He was talking about he leverages a lot of Back to the Future because he's a big fan. And it's kind of letting it all hang out actually helps you build those relationships. One of the other
Right.
things that I thought was worth discussing from your website actually had to do with a quote about people consume 3 to 5 pieces of content before talking to sales, typically, according
Yeah.
to research, let alone buying anything direct from a B2B or a B2C company. That whole process of multiple touches is what we traditionally call it in marketing, is something that I think a lot of people don't recognize. The kind of the one and done mentality, the quick hit, design a perfect funnel and boom, 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 you become a millionaire. I'm always preaching against the get rich quick schemers, but maybe you can say more about that process in the context of changing an industry and making a bigger difference, that you have a conversation as opposed to, like you said, I really like that you used the word transactional earlier.
I mean, you can kind of marry the two things that we've been talking about in a way, because I think the temptation is to say, oh, okay, 3 to 5 touches. So we're going to pelt the world with these different disparate blog posts, like whatever it takes to get the 3 to 5 touches or impressions. But that's not actually the goal. The goal is that they learn something about you through that time spent, right? The goal is people who stay and encouraging people to do so. And when that's the goal, it's not grabbing attention that you're after, it's to hold attention. There's only one like tactic that works, which is to provide a better experience. Say something that matters to people, construct the belief system, the ideas you're working with care, like actually develop your ideas and don't just shoot from the hip. Talk to your audience, talk to your customers. So I think we can kind of marry the two things we've been talking about, which is like this willingness that you or I have to speak our minds about, in this case, one domain, politics, and this idea that like 3 to 5 touches or holding attention is kind of what you need. Because when you say something from a place of what you believe, your philosophy, your point of view, it creates this helpful friction that people are drawn way into your corner if they agree, and they're repelled if they don't. This is not just politics. This is so much more. This is everything we talk about with our shows. Like the point of our shows is to make a difference. It just happens to be audio or video. All right, if you're rolling your eyes to hear me say that, we're not for you, and that's okay. We want to lead with that point of view because we want to bring the people that know they're in marketing to make a difference, to create things they're proud of and serve others, not to arbitrage a near-term trend and get out before it gets expensive. That's a lot of marketers too. We're not for them. And so by leading with our belief, we can bring the right people all the way into our corner and repel the wrong people. Instead of what most organizations do is they don't actually share their beliefs in a forceful way. And so they have more people that kind of glance at them and they're like, okay. And that's not what you want. That does nobody any good, right? So you might get more views on that post, but you don't get any action on the back end. You don't get any real relationships or depth of connection. And that's really what you're after. Again, resonance, not reach. So you take those two ideas, you marry them, share your beliefs very strongly, and then instead of being like 3 to 5 touch points, 3 to 5 disparate pieces of content, no, they all seem to happen in flow because people are willingly spending a lot more time with you over time, and that's where all those touch points happen, which, by the way, is how any human relationship works, business or otherwise.
Right. Yeah, the relationships take time. Well, for a last question, I want to ask you very selfishly, kind of like my point of view, this web show concept, which I've labeled, where I do live events, then we edit them and make them into a video series. We strip the audio out and turn it into a podcast. You, I think, more advocate straight ahead podcasts. Is that and you do what you call original series? Sort out the media for me, and do you think I'm trying to do too much, or do you think this innovation is great? I mean, it is part of my exploration, so I'll
Right.
answer my own
Right.
question that way. But what's your view about the landscape of podcasts, video series, and different options like that?
Yeah, I think it's all kind of the same thing. If you really boil it down to its essences or the bare bones of what a show is, right? That's really what we're talking about. Show. Is it an original series? Is it a web show? Live streaming, recorded, video, audio? It's all a show. And a show is just a combination of four things, and each of these four things should be developed proactively. So if you feel like something is missing with your show, John, or anybody watching this, look harder at these four things. So one is the premise. That's the big idea driving the whole show, because your audience will arrive thinking, what's going to be different for me when I'm done? The premise is the thing you're exploring. And it's not just your topics, it's also your hook. So it's not just what you explore, it's how you go about it. So a great premise is Lessonly, a software company for sales and customer success to train their teams. Lessonly has a show called Practice First, which seeks to elevate the role of practice for sales and customer success jobs. Okay, they could have just interviewed a bunch of experts in sales and customer success, but they have an actual premise. You know, they have this angle, this hook. It's a quest to elevate the meaning of something and explore it more deeply. So they talk to sommeliers, they talk to Olympians, and yes, they talk to corporate executives. That's a premise. So that's the first thing you need to do is develop the premise, and all the choices that follow really hang off of that. And then really, really quickly, the other three, because I think they follow on the premise, your episode format, which, John, you actually gave your audience up front. So you have what I would call a visible rundown. People know what the segments are. A lot of narrative style shows or docu-style shows, they have an invisible rundown. They know the flow, but the consumer doesn't. So the episode format, the talent, you as the host, right? Positioning yourself as a guide, understanding what you're all about, your tone of voice, treating it like a performance, not an actual conversation, because it is different in some ways. To mimic a conversation, you have to treat it differently, so it seems like a conversation. The talent, and then lastly, the community that forms around it. So if you just want to build a show, you're really building those four things discreetly, and they all have that kind of like one premise that hangs all together, that ties it all together, that first of the four.
So good, Jay. Thank you so much. So, want to make sure we promote whatever you want to promote. I know marketingshowrunners.com is the company, the expert.
Yep.
If you're a business looking to develop really high quality online original series, what have you, marketingshowrunners.com. And then you have your own personal website, jayacunzo.com. I'll put back up your little lower third here so they can know how to spell Acunzo. The jayacunzo, all one word.com. Is where they also can find you, and you're active on all the social media and all that. Anything else? Your book, your
You
podcast?
nailed it. Yeah, I mean, my book, Break the Wheel. Yeah, if you find me anywhere, you will find me everywhere else. So,
All right, and the tell me the name of the podcast again. I know. Is
yeah, I actually have two podcasts. Unthinkable's why you're talking to me, because it's why I make shows and teach it for a living.
Unthinkable,
That was
right?
the first one, Unthinkable. It's dormant this year. I'm hoping to bring it back next year. The one I'm actually working on is called Three Clips. It's where podcasters dissect their best work. So that's really exciting too, as a podcaster, to talk to others I admire and kind of get into the magic and the minutia that you don't really hear about too much. So that's called Three Clips.
Yeah, Three Clips. Yeah, that's really for people that are doing shows that want to understand that structure and the four-part thing. So that, Jay, thank you again and again. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I love that we have this connection, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Thanks so much, John, for everything you do.
All right, appreciate it. So that was great. Luscious Links for today. Like I said, I have a utility for you. And what it's for is for video and for getting access to clips like on YouTube, like on Vimeo, that normally don't allow you to download. And I guess I need to make a disclaimer. The rights issue and respect for people's rights is, you may want to do this only for personal use, depending on what kind of a show and whether you're commercial or not. I'm putting all those legal issues aside. But if you wanted to get access to a clip, for example, on YouTube that you couldn't download, you don't need to do a screen recording, which is kind of the workaround. I want to recommend to you this app called PullTube. And I want to actually give credit to my friend Zach Twist, who I worked with on a series of webinars. And one of the things he told me, besides the fact that this works, and I'm going to give you a real quick demo, I hope, is that he found that if he found a piece of audio or video that he couldn't download, he called it to the attention of the developer, and the developer actually updated the app and, you know, offered a free upgrade, and then he was able to do what he needed. I had a similar experience, which is I think it was my learning, but I reached out for support. The developer is in the Ukraine. He responded to me. We had a lovely email exchange, and so I think he really is one of the good guys. So I recommend this app, and here's how it works. So let me show you what it looks like. It's totally easy. So here's PullTube, and I'm just going to paste in a video URL that I went and random. I looked for a short clip that was short, so it's a Good Morning America clip, and so it goes out on the internet. It finds that clip. I click download video. Because this is just 2.5 minutes, it downloads pretty quickly. I guess it's interesting when you're doing live streaming and downloading at the same time. It can take a minute, but this is actually a pretty quick process. So then I have it downloaded on my hard drive, and I'm just going to pull it up into QuickTime Player on my Mac, and there's the clip ready to be played. So that's really all you have to do, and I can play it. So you can see the quality is really clean. Again, I'm not doing a screen capture. It actually is going into the background and pulling through the video clip itself. And so then you could, of course, bring it into any kind of editing program that you wanted to and make it part of your production. You know, maybe you're doing a rapid cut montage, because there is something called fair use. I'll say that much legally, that, and I'm not a lawyer, but if you do a short clip, that's considered fair use, and not a license is not required. So that's my Luscious Link for today. So it was interesting and a wonderful segue to have Jay on today and all the insights that he offered about original series, or what I like to call web shows. I'm going to do a special edition next week about web shows that I'm going to call the Web Show. And I'm going to talk about the software that I'm using to do this live streaming, plus the kind of production issues, what I'm using in terms of equipment, what kind of a team I have supporting me, and all that kind of stuff. And then we're actually going to take a break for Thanksgiving and catch our breath. We've been doing it every week. I think the video blog's been going on since last August, and I think we're on episode 39 here, and we've done about 8 of them in this live streaming format, so I'm going to catch my breath, which I've done once before. But anyway, join me next week on November 13th for the Web Show. And if there are any other ways that you want to connect, we created this links page, play.combridges.com/links. But most importantly, thank you. Thank you for your attention. You're part of the inner tribe, as Jay was describing, in the inner circles, or the concentric circles, and the people that actually are paying attention to what I'm doing here on Video Mojo, which is you. I can't tell you how grateful I am for your participation, for your showing up and being here. Obviously, I hope you know that any kind of clicking the likes or making comments, leaving reviews on iTunes, YouTube, whatever, that stuff really helps if you want to support us. Love you to share it with anybody that you think might be interested and find it useful. But most importantly, thank you for being here, and I hope you keep coming back, and I hope you find this useful. And that's Video Mojo for this week, and we'll see you next week.